Hi, and welcome back to Burgundy's Unstoppable Journey. Today, I've decided that I was going to discuss my journey with multiple sclerosis, and figured the best way to do that was to have somebody interview me and ask questions. So I've asked my friend Violet to do that. Violet, can you go ahead?
Hi, Burgundy, and thanks for having me here today to ask you questions. So we'll start with your personal story with MS. When did you first notice something was wrong?
Really young age, I think around the age of 8 is when I truly saw that something was going on.
And what kind of symptoms were you experiencing?
At age 8, I noticed that I was having bladder problems. I was actually having incontinence issues and overactive bladder. And I also struggled a lot with depression, which of course is really unusual for a young child. And severe fatigue. I was so tired as a child, which again is not normal.
And how did your parents react to that? How did they take your symptoms?
Unfortunately, my parents were a little preoccupied, as my mom actually has a whole dictionary worth of medical history. She's had 3 open heart surgeries now, and I think she had just had one when I was 8. She was just recovering from her latest surgery, or her latest open heart surgery.
Yeah. So your issues kind of got downplayed because they were less immediately serious.
Exactly.
Yeah. You told me a story about your dad and an incident where he realized that there was something going on.
Yeah. When I must have been 8 years old, I was, of course, like every little girl, wanting to ride a horse. And my dad's boss had a horse that was close to my house, that was stored close to my house. So I actually had the opportunity to ride his horse. And then I actually, while riding, lost control of my bladder and peed all over the saddle. It was quite embarrassing, but my dad actually was really serious, seemed concerned, like that. Why is this 8-year-old having problems? And I think that was the first time that everything kind of, yeah.
So, how did it affect your teenage years?
With everything, I've always been, let's just make jokes and laugh, because then, it's not serious. So I went through my whole childhood and my teens putting a big smile on my face, and everything's okay. My mom is not dying in the hospital. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it just wasn't a priority at that time. I couldn't be somebody else's priority at that time, because I'm busy dealing with my parents, or with my mom's health condition.
And tell me about what happened during your grade 12 final exams.
So during my grade 12 final exams, or diplomas as they're called here in Canada, I actually lost complete use of my right hand, which is my dominant hand. So I couldn't write. And I had said to my teacher at the time, but like, my hand's not writing. And of course, I even remember which teacher it was. And he was like, yeah, okay, sure, you're having problems writing right during diploma. Sure. And I kept dropping things. And finally he was like, okay, maybe you should see your doctor for that. And so that day I actually got to contact my doctor's office, and my doctor herself had actually just been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis just recently. So she had gone, oh, all these things Burgundy's been complaining about all these years, maybe they're true. And so I actually got in to see a neurologist the next, well, a week later. I had an MRI the next day, and then I got in to see the neurologist a week later. And after I had an MRI, and he had suggested that we do a spinal tap, because that's typically how they will diagnose, or back then, that's how they would diagnose MS. All the symptoms leading up to, and my age. Normally, that's why, like, normally people aren't diagnosed until they're in their 40s. Back then, that was the case. So everybody was like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with you. But my doctor, I had the same doctor my whole childhood, and my doctor was like, oh, okay, maybe all these things coming together, maybe I should pay attention. And she actually, right away, we figured out that I always knew something at that young age, that something was going on. But I was just told, oh, you're just dealing with depression, see a counselor. And so finally, when I lost use of my right hand, they put everything together, and I got an MRI, like I said, the next day. And the week after that, I was officially diagnosed. That was just before the end of grade 12. So I officially was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
And after you received your diagnosis, when you realized what that meant for your future, how did you react to that?
Well, at first I was like, look, see, I haven't been making this shit up, or this stuff up all this time. I actually was kind of excited that maybe there is something, like I've been saying. And then when it really sunk in, I really, like I always do, I got to do something about it. So I researched everything there was to research at that time. And there was a really, really famous doctor, Dr. Skinner, that was treating multiple sclerosis with diet. And he actually, in his book at the time, suggested that going into a vegetarian or plant-based diet would slow down the progression of the disease. And of course I was like, oh, okay, great. So I decided to be a vegetarian that day, and I haven't looked back. So.
And how did your family and friends react to you knowing you have MS?
Everybody just kind of, okay, like not really knowing what to do about it. And my family is still like, you could fight this, but obviously you can't fight MS. It's something that's inside your body, and you can't fix that. So it's always just been about, okay, let's take whatever drugs the neurologist at the time was suggesting. And I actually ditched him and got a different neurologist years later, but that's a whole other story. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's, yeah.
Knowing you as I do, I know that you don't like to accept limitations. So tell me about where your career took you as a result of fighting your limitations.
When I got diagnosed was a month before graduating high school. And then I had always, since I was a child, I was always going to be a psychologist. That was always my goal. And so I always had the goal of going to university, but I did take a year off after graduating. And I got my graduation, or I graduated in June of 2000. And I was actually diagnosed in May of 2000, which quite a, okay. And at first, not a lot of people really, okay, Burgundy is going to fight through this. And I did have one good friend that got really, really upset about it one night. One of our first drinking experiences, she broke down and was crying and, oh, you have MS. And I, of course, at that point, I didn't even understand what it could hold. I heard that it could cause me to lose my ability to walk and lose my vision. But of course, at that time, I hadn't experienced that. So I just, yeah, okay, whatever. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And still kind of have that attitude. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Smiling on. Everything's perfect when you smile and nod.
Now, you were an EMT for a while. Tell me a little bit about that.
I did 3 years at university working on my psychology degree. And my neurologist at the time, this goes into why I ended up getting a different neurologist, actually, I lost my eyesight. In my 3rd year of university, I lost my eyesight. And my neurologist said, oh, the courses it's too much stress. That's what's causing this. And you need to drop out. And I was like, heck no. So instead of dropping out of the university, I did drop out, but I dropped out and became an EMT. I don't know how that all correlated, but I just felt like that was something that I should try, is being an EMT, and I ended up doing that for 15 years.
You were an EMT, and you have taught advanced first aid and EMT courses.
Sorry about that.
Let's just keep rolling. We can do a cut.
Yeah, it's my. Sorry, that would be my dog responding to nobody.
Okay, perhaps she has calmed down now. Let's continue. So we talked about the EMT phase. And after you were unable to teach and you had to stop working, describe what that was like.
That was the worst experience of my life. That was in 2017. I remember the date. I remember everything. And that was the absolute worst time I've ever experienced. Being told I can't do something has always been kind of my motivation for doing the exact opposite. But struggling with depression my whole life, being told I couldn't do what I loved, and I'd worked so hard to become an EMT and a teacher and a examiner for the province, I actually am embarrassed to say I attempted suicide and spent a month in the ICU because I overdosed, and then spent a whole year retraining my brain and trying to get some of my cognitive abilities back, because overdosing of medications is not good for the brain.
How is your outlook today?
About the same, that I am going to push through this, and every single day I ask it. Hi, sorry about that. My son coming in from junior high. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's start again. How is your outlook now?
Wonderful. I make a point of asking my kids, or I try to ask my kids every day, what are they grateful for? And I want to know 3 things they're grateful for. So every day I have something that I'm grateful for, and I like to share that with my kids and share that with the universe or whoever's listening, usually Google. But yeah, no, I have a great outlook. I just want to be able to, I've always wanted to help people. That's why I wanted to be a psychologist. That's always been my goal, is to help people somehow. So, and just continuing, I just want to be able to help people and share my story so that other people can maybe benefit from what I might have been through or struggled through and battled through. So my outlook is really good.
Great. That is a beautiful story, and thank you so much for sharing it. After we take a break, let's talk about what MS is.
Okay.